The long story short is that if you pursue the male gaze to its extreme, you're actually not going to hit the peaks of attractiveness for women. So you can just be like, all right, would I fuck myself? That's the best question you can ask yourself, right? As you're kissing yourself, God, and you could be like, all right, it's not gay because it's me, so it's fucking fine. So one of the most transformative advices that I could give you for getting better with women is to start thinking like a woman, right? Because if we're honest with ourselves and we don't try to delude ourselves with, oh, I'm not doing it for the girls, I'm doing the self-improvement journey for myself and blah, blah, blah. That can be true, but it's not the 100% full story, right? If you are at any point interested in women, some of your behaviors, and a lot more than you're probably aware of, are going to be consciously or subconsciously getting you towards getting more women. And I highly advise that we just be honest with ourselves and say, look, yeah, I want to get girls. Yes, I care about validation from women. Yeah, I want attention from women. I want their, I want their bodies. I want their affections. I want their support. It's so much easier of a journey if you just admit that to yourself. And it's not weakness. It's weakness to go, oh, I don't care about women. But then really, like, so much of what you're doing is driven by your hormones and your horniness. And so much of your status chasing and trying to be better than everyone else and self-improvement, so much of it is actually rooted in lust. But a lot of people really aren't ready to just admit that to themselves. And it would be so much easier once you do. But if you're the kind of man who has the balls to be honest with himself and go, yeah, I just want to get laid a bunch, or I just want a girlfriend, or I just want a wife. And a lot of my energies in my life are geared towards making myself more attractive and making myself a good provider. So if you understand that a lot of your motivations to get better in a lot of places in your life, but specifically in dating, it's because you want women, right? Duh. Well, if you want women, then you need to give women what they want, and they'll give you what they can in return, right? You can give her a dick, and she can give you a pussy. You can give her your male affection, and she can give you her female affection and your male support, and she gives you her female support. And so we can create a team dynamic with those energies, those cooperative, synergetic energies. But the problem with a lot of men, and the vast majority of dating advice out there, right, especially red pill, and be a high value man and be an alpha. The problem with these pursuits is that, well, they're fine in and of themselves, but they market themselves as helping you with women. But they sometimes show their real cards by saying, oh, we're not doing it for the women, we're doing it for ourselves, which is, in a sense, I just pointed out bullshit. But at the same time, it is kind of true. But what they're not really showing the full colors of that truth is they're saying, I'm doing it for myself. Not necessarily. What you're doing it for is the man inside of you. In the man inside of you, what his desire is to be at the top, or at least in the top category of other men. I'll explain this to you a little bit more specifically. So there's this term, I'm sure you've heard of it, it's called the male gaze and the female gaze. Now the male gaze comes from, I think the term was coined by a feminist, the term feminist philosopher is a bit of an oxymoron, but we'll use that term. And I remember coming across it in when I took a feminist class in university, and I took it specifically to challenge myself because I knew what I was going to walk into, and I was pretty much proven right on almost all fronts. And I got in tons of fights with the professor and the chicks. There was only one other guy in the class. I ended up hooking up with one of the girls in the class, anyways. One or two actually, yeah, and which is fucking ironic. But, or I guess it's not ironic once you understand really what women want, which we're going to kind of get to, right? I promise there's a point to this digression. There always is. I'm a very digressive, like I go here, 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 but then I eventually tie it all together. So if you stick with me, you'll learn a lot. And I remember there was a book. I can't remember exactly which one. I think the author, her name was Helena Sixu or something like that. I don't know if that was her real name or a fake name. It might have been a real name. She might have been French. I don't fucking know. And it was something, the book was called Medusa's Gaze, or the Medusa, or fucking something, whatever. And she talked about the male gaze. And what the male gaze was, it was how women are transfixed and kind of pressured by the desire of so the man gives his gaze and then evaluates and judges based on that, and then the woman, being the object of that gaze, is going to, transform and adapt to suit the male gaze, right? And it's true, it's not a lie. But she, from what I understand, she kind of presented it as some sort of oppressive force, like, oh, this gaze is controlling me and subduing me. And that's not necessarily true. It can, right? Everything can be taken to the extreme, and it can be in a force of oppression, but it isn't inherently a force of oppression. It's inherently just an observational framework. It's a frame of reference that you can see the world by. And you can also see the world by frame of reference of a female gaze, right? And we are going to be, as men, naturally inclined towards the male gaze, but sometimes men can have a little bit more feminine personalities, especially if they're raised in certain environments. Like, I was raised by a single mother, so I had to create a lot of my own male gaze. I mean, a lot of it was already just created by my biology, but I kind of had to form it. So actually, in my formative years, a lot of how I saw the world was formed by a female perspective of the world. So when I started to learn about women and appreciate women in a holistic sense, right? I mean, I was horny. I wanted to put my dick inside of them. But before I really had a sex drive, but I had a sex drive pretty early, I did see women from a different perspective, and I didn't quite understand what it was. I was just fascinated by their nature. And I think what that was, if we're just speaking metaphorically, was like my female gaze was seeing them and wanting to understand them so that, the feminine inside of me could understand itself. I know that sounds fucking lame and weirdo, right? But it's true. Just because it's cringe doesn't mean it's false. So the point earlier when I talked about like red pill and be a man and be alpha, what all of these pursuits are doing is they are having the male gaze as their frame of reference and then inspecting and observing themselves and others and transforming themselves and adapting themselves to the standard of that. And it's not necessarily evil and it's not necessarily good. It has its function. It's functional, just like the female gaze is functional. So if you look out in the world and you only see things by the male gaze, then you're going to improve if you do the steps necessary to listen to the taskmaster within the male gaze. The harsh sensei, like, be stronger, be this, be more persistent, have more energy, be more disciplined, You're going to adapt to that. But what's going to happen is you are going to be satisfying the male gaze. And if you only see the male gaze, your idea of attractiveness is only from the male gaze. So the long story short is that if you pursue the male gaze to its extreme, you're actually not going to hit the peaks of attractiveness for women. But so many men think they are, right? The best example is bodybuilding. If you look at Mr. Olympia, like, the people who love bodybuilding the most are men, not women. So you have your Chris Bumsteads, your Arnold Schwarzeneggers, like, think of like Baki, if it's a great anime, Kengan Ashura, like any sort of like the V, big chest, big arms. That is a male ideal because it's functional from the male perspective, right? It intimidates other men. It's beautiful in and of itself. And you understand what comes with it. Strength, virality, even though that's not necessarily true, right? A lot of those guys have really fucked up hormones because they had gone to the extremes of the male gaze, right? So it's the adaptation and the perfection of the male gaze, but it's not actually going to get you the best results with women. Now, this is where men go, well, I'm doing it for myself. Okay, yeah, whatever, dude. If you are, then there's no need to argue with me and leave a comment, right? Then just be happy that you're succeeding with other men. But honestly, like, if you really, really think about it, and there's nothing wrong with it. So before I say this, I'm not insulting you. I'm just telling you what it is. You are performing for other men. You're not just doing it for yourself, right? Because we call out the girl who says, oh, I just go to the club and dress up nice to dance by myself and look sexy. It's like, no. If you really felt that way, you would get all dolled up and dressed up and dance in your room. The fact that you're going to a place, oh, I do it for the vibes, that may be true, But a lot of it's because you want fucking attention, right? You want other people to see how sexy and amazing you are. So, men, if you're not getting in like the best shape ever and doing all that, and you're not just sitting in your house, you're doing it for others. The reason why you're uploading to social media or going to build bodybuilding competitions or constantly like competing and trying to be better, I'm not saying it's unhealthy, and I'm not saying it's bad. It can be, and it also can be very healthy. What I'm saying is that you are inherently doing it for the satisfaction of your own internal male gaze or for other men's male gaze. It's a little bit homoerotic if you think about it. And there's nothing wrong with it. I've had plenty of periods where I was really trying to get bulk and look good, and I succeeded. And it was fun, and I felt very strong, and I liked it. But at the end of the day, I hit this peak where I was like, I'm like at close to the max level of attractiveness when it comes to how women view me. Right? Any bigger, and I'm just going to be satisfying other men or my own masculinity, right? I hit the point where I have the big arms, the big chest, nice abs. I can maybe cut down to more body fat percentage, but then that would be really difficult and it's hard to sustain over a long period of time, and I'm going to feel like shit. So, no, I'm pretty good. And the results were amazing. Girls were like salivating on me. They would be like, grab my arms and like, oh my God, it's so sexy. You know, we'd fuck, and they just loved grabbing my back and feeling my muscles. They were really, really turned on by it. So once I hit that peak, that was good. But if you go further, you're just competing with other men. So all of this fucking self-improvement shit, red pill stuff, you know, all the big figures that everyone looks up to, you are worshiping masculinity, and you are becoming a servant of masculinity, which has its functions, right? A strong society, a Roman Empire, an American Empire, you know, Genghis Khan, all these things, these are all created because of masculinity optimized. But there's a lot of things in it that are highly immoral and wrong, like the murder and the conquest. It sounds cool in theory, but in practice, it's a pretty horrible thing. At the same time, we have a lot of greatness because of it, right? We can understand that amazing things come from not so great pursuits, right? But we're not getting, I'm not a culture channel, right? I'm not trying to change society. I'm just trying to make you good with women, right? But I'm willing to comment on these things only to the sufficient extent that I need to have you understand that, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's looked at all these movements and understands them and and understands their limitations. And then we come back to what's the real goal. And the real goal of this channel is to get pussy and to get relationships. You know, your self-improvement journey and all that, that's other channels. That's fine. You know, those are beautiful things. They serve their purpose, but they have a limitation. And for me, they're all really just serving, you know, the means of getting a girl and, you know, getting my own self-improvement to a sufficient level. Self-improvement, it's a never-ending journey, and that's not a good thing. Like never-ending journeys sound horrible. Like, I want to get a result and get it and then be done. So you want to start thinking from a female gaze. So everything I've just explained, okay, I understand where the male gaze leads, and I understand there's a limit to it. So how can I implement the female gaze? And if you even have resistance to it, then that means you're a slave to the male gaze, right? And I understand why, because right now we're building up all these defenses and backlashes towards the extremes that have come from the other side of the aisle of feminism and different ideologies, and I get it. But you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? All of those things are, yeah, really extreme and toxic, but then you're just adopting an opposite toxicity. And then you're just going to create a state of like 20, 30 years of like hyper this. And then again, this shit's going to come back, right? By fighting fire with fire, you're going to create the opposite eventually. So extreme feminism and all that is creating what we're in now. And it's going to get more extreme, and it's going to be dominant and take over. And then eventually this is going to come back. And it's just this constant back and forth. And it sounds like a fucking cycle of suffering. And it's just so completely unnecessary. So take what you can from this, right? But then the female gaze, I really want you to understand, it's amazingly powerful, and it's more powerful than the male gaze when it comes to getting girls. Now, you need to have a masculinity to a sufficient extent. And yes, women love masculine men, but men love masculine men more than women love masculine men. Like, I really want you to think about that, right? Like I said, all the bodybuilding, powerlifting, war, fight, like any MMA, most of the fans are men. Like, really just think about it for a second. So that literally means that men love it more than women. Yes, Are there things about it that women love? Of course, right? They love a man who is strong and can defend himself and can provide and da 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 da. But the thing women love more than the man who optimizes things from the male perspective are a man who has a sufficient level of masculinity but then masters the female gaze. The most amazing seducers in history are not your Arnold Schwarzeneggers, your Sylvester Stallones, your manly men. They're not. The best seducers, you know, you can say, oh, Genghis Khan, he fucked 45. Yeah, well, he destroyed tons of countries and killed thousands and thousands of people. Like, the karma from that is horrible. That guy is in hell for a long fucking time. Okay, so don't even, if you look up to a conqueror with any sort of admiration, you are a fool. Because if you were on the receiving end of what he's doing, I promise you wouldn't be looking at him so admirably. The best lovers in history are very feminine. They are your Casanovas, your guys who have a lot of feminine qualities because they have adopted the female gaze, and so they have adapted to it. So you adopt the female gaze and then you adapt to it. Of course, a lot of men watching this are going to be like, this guy's a fucking blue pill, blank, blank, blank. Things that I can't say on YouTube anymore, unfortunately, even though they'd be very useful words here. Oh, this guy's a loser, you know, blah, 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 blah. That's fine, right? But the guy getting the most pussy is actually a guy who is masculine and very feminine. And he understands what women truly want. So, what do women truly want? If you want to understand that, right? I could just give you a list of things, but that's not helpful in the fucking least, right? And some of them are going to sound really lame, like empathy and compassion and romance and sweetness and gentleness rather than that hard assertiveness, like, yeah, be a man, girls love me. That shit's great. Yes, girls do love it. But there is so much more power in, like I said, you need that to a sufficient extent. If you're purely feminine, girls won't want to fuck you. They're your best friend, right? Like the gay best friend. He's maximizing the female gaze. So you do need masculinity to a sufficient extent, okay? And if you're lacking in that, then you need to build that first, then go to this, right? But what was interesting about my journey was that I had the female gaze from the very beginning. So I adopted it over the years and mastered it and can see things from a female perspective. And then once I went through puberty and masculinity started, you know, being forced upon me, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to do this, I want to fight, I want to fuck, you know, I was like, okay. And I started to master that, and then once I integrated them, girls loved me. And they loved me 10 times more than the big manly man who da-da-da-da-da, right? Like, I would fuck the girlfriends of those guys. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not bragging about that. I'm actually very against sleeping with girls who have boyfriends or husbands, right? It's immoral and you shouldn't do it ever. I'm just presenting that as a, like, these guys are not the heights of attractiveness. They're only the heights of attractiveness from the perspective of a man. You idealize them and you misidealize them thinking women also idealize them, right? So you look up to the men because you're looking with the male gaze, and then you think, oh my God, if I could be like that, all the women in the world would love me. No, they wouldn't. I mean, they might, because that position also includes things that women love, like status and pre-selection, like, which means other women like you, so then women see other women liking you, and then that creates, right? Dan Bilzerian has mastered that. He mastered pre-selection. I don't care what you think about him in terms of like, oh, daddy's money. I don't give a shit. I'm just saying he understood that women like men who other women like. So he just created a life where tons of women like him, and then tons of women more by orders of magnitude are going to chase him. It's a very simple fucking equation, and he mastered it and took advantage of it, and it works. So back to the female gaze. I could see things through the female perspective. And like I said, I can give you these traits of, like, women respect grace. They respect class. They respect gentleness rather than assertiveness. They respect cooperativeness. They respect a guy who is patient and soft and kind. If you don't have the masculinity to support these roles, then you're just a friend zone guy, right? But if you have the sufficient masculinity and then you have these, women will fall over backwards for you, fall in love with you. They will allow you things they would never allow another man. And they will love you because you truly understand women. And to truly understand women, you have to love women. Like, it comes together. Once you truly understand women, you love women. And when you love women, you truly understand them. They're technically separate things, but they they can help boost each other. And if you really, really want to understand women from the female gaze, then you have to adopt the female gaze. How do you adopt the female gaze? Well, you need to start thinking like a woman. And I mean this in like a very literal sense, right? Like you kind of have to become transgender for a moment, right? And think, okay, like I want you to like, this is going to be fucking weird, right? And if you have some resistances to this and it's going to feel awkward, but if you can do it, it's actually really, really powerful, okay? And nothing bad is going to happen to you, right? You're not going to suddenly turn gay, or you're not going to suddenly, want to get a sex change or anything like that. I mean, if you do, then okay, that's your thing, right? I'm not, hopefully not insulting you, and I'm hopefully not scaring you. It's just a mental exercise, okay? So I want you to look at the world and think, okay, what if I was a woman, right? And if you have good imagination, you can really do this. Like, it's like a form of meditation. Sit there, okay, I have long hair, right? I don't have this like intense, strong, assertiveness. I have a soft kind of like gentleness, right? And you can go through and start to build a female body in your mind. And as you start to adopt this, things are already going to start to happen. Once you start taking this perception, right? Perceptions are labels that your mind attaches to other thoughts and labels or images or sounds or any of the senses that you encounter in your experience as a person. So you start creating this image. This image is going to start creating mental feelings, right? Because nothing's actually changing here, but it's going to change the feelings in your mind. And then it's going to change, even how you smell things and how you listen to things. And I want you to think, okay, once I've created this like Hectorina, right? So here's Hector, and you create Hectorina in your head. Then you think, okay, how do I see the world? And you can just do it in general. Like, how do I see friendship from a female perspective? How do I see motherhood? How do I see fatherhood? How do I see being a daughter or being a son or being a brother or a sister? Then, once you have a baseline of just like how this woman would see the world, then what you can do is you can start to see romance and sex, right? And what's interesting about this is I'm a Buddhist, right? So I believe in rebirth, and we have been being reborn billions of times, not just as humans, but as gods, as animals, ghosts, demons, in hell and heaven, hundreds of thousands of millions of times, right? It's a cycle that we've been in for a very, very long time. It is impossible that you haven't at some point been a woman. Literally impossible. You have been a woman probably hundreds, thousands, probably millions of times. So for me, in my belief system, it's very easy to do this because all you have to do is have some sort of hint of when you have been that person. And if you can access those memories, you can use that as like a skillful thing. Now, that might be really weird for some of you to think about. You're like, this guy's fucking weird, and you click off the video. I get it, right? But this is super powerful if you can pull it off. Try to recall one of your female past lives, okay? And what I want, we're going to get, I've always been super direct, okay? We're just going to get super cringe. Like, you have had a husband before. You have given birth before. You have sucked dick before. Like, you've gotten fucked before. Like, it's really weird when you start to think about it, and it can make you very cringe. I know, because in these exercises, I'll be like, oh, this is weird, right? But I'm not saying you need to become that. I'm just saying recall it to the sufficient extent that it can be skillful, okay? So see, what makes a man attractive to a woman? Really? Is it the big muscles? To a certain extent, yes. But how much of that idealization is actually what I think the male ideal is? Because here's the thing, like when I would fuck girls and I wanted to kind of like, I don't know, boost myself, right? Because I'm a short guy and I would sometimes wouldn't feel as like, as I would ideally like to be, right? I got blessed with some good genetics, and for my size, I have a pretty big dick. But I promise you, no matter how big your dick is, you can always imagine it being bigger, right? So I would be in bed, but I'm short though, so I really wouldn't have that like, oh, I'm this big beast who's like all over this girl and smashing her, right? So I wouldn't feel that, but I'd be like, all right, I got a pretty big dick, but is this like as awesome as I think it would be? Because as hedonists, right, we're always looking for a higher pleasure. So what I would do in my mind is I would imagine myself as this like hyper masculine, like Tauran orc, like monster who was like fucking 10 feet tall, had a like 17-inch dick, and was just like ripping this girl apart, right? This imagery would make me so fucking good in bed, Like, I would tear girls up and they would absolutely love it, right? So I would take a male ideal, right? And I would use it to create a hyper masculinity that would in bed engage her hyper femininity. So I would become the heights of dominance and she would become the heights of submission, and she would just get wrecked in bed, right? Women love rough sex for the most part. And so adopting the male gaze was fantastic there. But here's the thing. We were already fucking it in bed. That's where you want to be hyper masculine. However, if you take that male gaze and apply it to every moment of a seduction, then what happens is you start to lose the optimal attractiveness to her. The optimal attractiveness to her is actually going to be if you adopt a lot of the female gaze qualities, right? So you have the sufficient masculinity, but then you did your little like female meditation and you're like, okay, what do women actually like? And imagine yourself as the woman and an ideal man. Ideally yourself, right? Because you don't want to feel gay while you're doing it. So you can just be like, all right, would I fuck myself? That's the best question you can ask yourself, right? And it's fucking, like, the fact that I'm uploading this to YouTube is real fucking cringe, but I've always been very open and transparent, and I hope that people appreciate it. But, like, you could imagine yourself fucking kissing yourself, right? And you could be like, all right, it's not gay because it's me, so it's fucking fine. And you just do it. And you're like, okay, do I find myself attractive? And here's the biggest takeaway that you're going to take from this meditation. If you're not the most physically attractive guy, you're not big, you're not good looking, this, you know, whatever it is that you don't like about yourself from the male gaze, what you find in this meditation is it's really not that important. It's really not. Because as you're kissing yourself, God, you know what, whatever, we're just going to power through the cringe for the sake of knowledge and wisdom, right? You will see that actually it's mostly your behaviors and your personality that make you attractive to a woman. It's the way you're kissing. It's the way you're touching her. It's the way you're grabbing her. Yes, everything that you're doing needs to be masculine. But when you become master with women and you understand what the woman wants, you go from being the guy who's like, to the guy who's like this, but then once he pulls her in very like assertively, he softens and he kisses her very softly. He moves through her body very softly. He has grace. He has empathy. He whispers in her ear and he's like, I want to fuck your pussy. And he just says dirty things, but he says them in such a gentle, kind, loving way. Like she's coming to your hotel and you're giving her the best 5-star spa resort experience possible. You're like, welcome to Daddy's Hotel. I'm going to give you the best experience possible. I'm going to give you a massage and da-da-da-da-da. Now, all you're doing is just grabbing her and kissing her and putting your dick inside of her and having fun. But when you do it from this perspective of like, I understand what the female wants. I'm seeing myself touching you and kissing you and fucking you from your perspective. So when you get really good at this, I've been fucking girls before. And as I'm fucking her, I'm like, what is her experience like? So as I'm actually having sex with her, I'll do this and I'll just go whoop and I'll be like, I'm the girl, right? But I'm also the man. It's not like she's the man, right? That's when you're taking it too far and it just becomes weird. I'm the man and I'm also the woman, right? There's a reason why we have these terminologies of like, there was an old way that people explain sex, the beast with two backs, right? I mean, you're literally becoming one, right? You're putting something inside something and you're conjoined. Like, think about it, right? And there's tons of mythologies from history about men and women, right? I don't know where it comes from, but like men and women used to be intact and then they were cut in half, right? And then they became, opposites of each other, but they came from a unique source, right? And actually in my beliefs in Buddhism, once you get past there's many heavens, and once you get past the sensual heavens, the first 7 heavens, and you go to the Brahma realms, they don't have genders in those realms. And so if you're in that realm and then you get reborn in a lower realm that involves the masculine and the feminine, you get cut and you either jump to a man or a woman. So these mythologies actually have some sort of reality in our experience, right? So when you're having sex with a woman, like, you're becoming one. So if you can just flip your perspective and see not just the sexual act, but the entire act of being a provider and being a mother, being the fucker and the fucked, being the, being the mother and the father, being the masculine friend and the female friend, right? There's so many of these things that share common values, right? Just as human beings and just as beings in general. But then we do have our differences. But if you can master and understand these differences by adopting what would it be like to be that person in that experience, you can create a perfect experience. And if you create that perfect experience, you become the height of attractiveness to women, right? So then everything just starts coming out of this. You start understanding, oh, this is why women love the pretty boys, right? That's why K-pop is so popular, and all these women are just in love with these really pretty looking men, right? They're like, oh, it's because estrogen and plastic and these neurochemicals and the downcline of society. It's like, no, women have always loved men like these, right? It's just at the forefront of culture right now. Women have always loved feminine-looking men. And in a lot of cases, those guys end up getting laid and are loved more than the masculine men. And it's a very difficult thing because you're like, oh my God, I spent all this time trying to become a man, and I'm realizing that most of my drive was actually just to be better than other men and not to be, attractive. But like both are equally, if one pursuit is dumb, they're both equally dumb. If you want to become, the best man ever, it's stupid. If you want to become loved by all the women ever, it's equally stupid, right? It's just a choice. Do you want to dominate and be above all, and not even like in a negative way. You want to inspire other men and be a leader of other men. Okay, whatever, that's fine. Oh, I want to be loved and admired by a lot of women. They're equally hedonistic. They're equally, it's what you do with it that matters, if it has integrity or not. So many things start getting understood by this mental exercise. You understand so much of the world. Oh, this is why women like masculine men. Why would that woman end up with that man? He doesn't abide by my standards of what a masculine man is. Because a lot of guys who, are red pill and be a man, they can see someone like me and they're like, how the fuck does this loser ever get a girl? What a virgin, Because I remember like there was there was a bunch of people came on my channel because some guy made a video about me and they were like all insulting me, like, oh, this fucking loser, he doesn't look. And I understood where they're coming from. I'm like, yeah, by a lot of objective measures, I shouldn't be attractive to women if you're coming at it from the male gaze. But all these guys were very inexperienced. They don't understand women. So they only think like, oh, you have to look like an Arnold Schwarzenegger to get women. Or you have to be like super ultra pretty. And it's like, no, those things can work. But what women really, really like is a guy who understands them and who treats them as if he understands them and treats them with love, and he truly, truly likes them. Like when I go out and talk to women, like, yeah, I'm like, oh, fuck bitches, But at the end of the day, I just love, I love looking at them. I think they're pretty and I think they're beautiful. And I can just sit there and go, oh my God, you're so pretty. Now, 10 seconds later, I'm going to like skull fuck her with my dick, right? So there is that sexual aspect, right? Otherwise, that would just be in the friend zone. But there also is that aspect of, like, I remember, like, there was this girl I was in bed with, and she was like, oh, because it was our first date. So she's like, oh, I don't know. Should we have sex? Should we not? And I remember she was laying on her back, and she was like, I'm literally doing a checklist on whether I should sleep with you or not. And she had her knees up on the bed. And I was, like, just waiting there, and I went on her knees like this. Like, I put my hand on her knees, and I was like, it's okay, baby. Take your time. And it was like the way, like if you were seeing it from the outside, you'd be like, this is the most beta fucking weird shit ever. But I remember her looking at me. I was like, yeah, take your time, baby. And she was like, she loved the fact that I was so patient and understanding. And, it's great because there was also so many positive aspects of it. I showed patience. I showed abundance mentality, like all these red pill terms, right? Discipline and over my emotions, But there was also just this love. There was just this, I think you're pretty and you're amazing and I want to spend time with you and I want to give you pleasure. Yes, I want to make my pee-pee feel good by, slamming my banana into you, but I also want you to feel good and I'm happy to be around you, and I just love the sound of feminine voices and the feel of your skin. It's so soft and you radiate this very specific type of energy that I like being around. And I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated by the game of understanding what women want, because a lot of times my preconceptions of what women want are wrong. So this idea can take you to the heights of understanding when it comes to women. Like if you can watch this video and you understand this video, you could pretty much never need another video again, because you will understand everything that you need to when it comes to women. You will understand that if I want to get women, I just need to know what women want. And if I become the thing that women want, I will get women. Fucking QED. End of the logic puzzle. Boom, boom, boom. It's a syllogism. Like, I'll say it again. I'm going to reiterate myself, and it's not YouTube friendly, like, oh, he's already lost our attention. But I'm a teacher, not a YouTuber, right? Women want X. Become X, women will want you. Duh. Well, you're not a woman in this birth, but you can do enough mental exercises and also getting experience with women and dating them, even being friends with them, right? Purposefully put yourself in the fucking friend zone and just it'll teach you a lot of things. You'll learn discipline over your emotions, despite the fact that you want to put your penis inside of her, but you're willingly saying, I'm going to get friend zoned because I just want to spend time around women and understand what they want. And so many benefits will come of it. So be creative with this. And I know it was super cringe for me to tell you to have, some sort of imagine yourself as a woman a meditation, but it's magic. Do it. So I've gone way overboard. This video is probably 30 minutes already. And I've over-explained myself to infinity, as is usual. But like I said, I'm a teacher, not a YouTuber. So hope you enjoyed the video. Hector Castillo, girlschase.com. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell. If you want knowledge that will come to you much quicker, because I already did all the work of all those meditations and experience with women, you can check out my courses in the description below. I have a book on texting. I have a book on my college experiences. If you're in college, or even if you're not in college, it's useful for understanding reputation and social circle. Perfectly applicable to anything in life, because people do not change after college. People don't change after high school, right? They stay the fucking same. So all the principles apply. Humanity doesn't suddenly evolve from 21 years old to 22 years old. I have a book on approaching girls during the day called Meet Girls Everywhere. You can check that out in the description. And if you want one-on-one coaching with me, if you like my incohesive tangents and rambling style of education, that's a little bit more tailored to you specifically from one-on-one coaching, then feel free to sign up for a 10-minute consultation call, which is in the description below. We can have a chat and see if coaching is right for you. So Hector Castillo, girlschase.com. Like, ring the bell, subscribe, go fuck yourself, love women, meditate on being a woman, have fun, be a good person. Ciao.